Welcome back, everyone, to Insights at DDLynn Designs. This is DDLynn, and it's a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So today I'm going to show you how to do a single wire wrap on this beautiful moonstone. And I just did a tutorial just a few days ago on how to do this component. And I've already created a different component, a bigger one, because I'm using a bigger stone. So what I did in the tutorials, I showed you how to make all these, well, not all these, but I made several different components. They're all pretty much the same. So let me show you. Sometimes I change my design up, bring them closer together. But on this one, I added a milky moonstone and a beautifully dark blue kyanite bead. I'm not going to be going through this today because I did a tutorial on this, but you should know how to add a bead to something by now. And what I did is I made the bail so that I can put my chain or leather cord through. I hammered it. So I used a 20 gauge and I hammered it so it's good and tight. And then I wrapped it around this stone a couple of times just to give it some more dimension. And I turned the this component that's known as a mosaic or a filigree or a flower. Sometimes people like it like this in the bracelet that I showed you on that tutorial, right? So the bracelet was connecting from the larger loops. On this one, I made the focal point the smaller loop. So anyways, let's get started. So I just love this piece, and I love how organic it is and that it really showcases the stone. I would say this is a little bit more intermediate because you have to be able to hammer your wire and capture your stone. So I'm using a 1-inch pear-shaped or teardrop-shaped moonstone, and this one's wider in girth, and I think if you're just starting out it might be a little bit easier for you to find a pear-shaped gemstone that's a little bit wider on the bottom. I'm going to move my camera a little bit. I know I get comments about me working out of frame, and listen, you guys, I don't do it on purpose. If you haven't tried it and you have no camera skills like me, then you're just, you're fighting yourself sometimes. So I'm really trying to do my best to stay in frame. So because of the size of my stone, it's 1 inch in length. I cut myself 14 inches of wire, and I've already marked my wire in the center. So here's a little tip. I'm always going to be giving tips, tricks, and techniques to help accelerate your journey in this ancient art of wire. And when I first started out, I didn't watch a lot of tutorials. A lot weren't out, but the thing I always focused on was technique. I know we can follow someone in something, but how did they get the wire to do that? What direction did they go in? Were they pinching on the wire on the point? Were they coming further out or further in? All these different things that make a huge difference. So I'll always try to focus on that. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell if you already are a subscriber. It takes 1 second to give me a thumbs up, and your comments and feedback are really appreciated, you guys. I'm trying to climb the social media ladder here, and it's interesting with billions of people doing the same thing. In any event, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the widest girth of my stone. So I'm using myself a little, I don't even remember what this is called. Sorry. You can get them digital or you can get them manual like this one. So I'm looking at about 15 millimeters or just over 1/2 of an inch. So it's in between 3/4 and over 1/2 of an inch. So this is going to be my guide, and I'm going to be using my ring mandrel to just kind of set myself up on how big I want my loop. So this looks like just a little bit bigger than a 6. So I'm going to take my wire, and I can always make it smaller. So I'm just going to drop it down below the 6, and I'm just going to bend this wire around like that. Then I'm going to cross it over in the back. And I'm going to be making a lot of adjustments as I'm going. I just kind of want to get the loop that I'm going to be using to connect to this frame. I need to set myself up for that. So it's going to go like this. And it's going to ride up on, ooh, my wires are hitting my light. It's going to ride up on the stone like this. So we're going to be hammering this section here. And then if you look at the back, it's going to come down low on the bottom of the stone. And then I'm going to connect it here and make a bail. And we're going to be making adjustments, as I mentioned, as we go. So right now I know that I want my loop smaller. So I'm just going to kind of hold here and start bending it around the back. And I think what I'm going to do is actually... This was all freestyle, you guys. This wasn't something I learned from someone else. And by the way, if anything's original, because someone commented once, well, I've seen that before, where we're all going to see so many things from so many people before. I mean, this predates 5,000 years before the Phoenicians, and someone had commented on one of the chain link I just did recently. And that particular link design has been around for thousands and thousands of years. I learned it from a friend of mine in Mexico 4 years ago. He probably learned it from whoever did jewelry with him. We're all learning from each other. So the only time I'll take claim to something, and of course everything I've learned at that point was from others and looking at other people's designs, is that when I'm just doing something freestyle, which is 90% of the time. But when it comes to links or even this component, I can guarantee you someone else has done it. So I'm certainly not taking any credit for it, but I think we all have due credit for committing and dedicating thousands of hours into mastering this art, which I think will be a lifetime of learning. So in any event, I'm going to put this back on my stone. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. And I keep hitting my camera and my light. And then I'm just kind of manipulating it a little bit. It's quite fiddly. And I really want this to squeeze around the lower part of the back. And it's hard for me to actually show it to you because I have to hold the stone and hold my back. But I want it low down because I'm going to need that to capture the stone when I bring my wires around. So I'm just kind of squeezing in. And if you'll notice here in a minute how it's going to start looking. I'm using the stone to give me leverage to flatten this up on the back. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. And I know I tend to move to the right a lot, so let me slide my camera down. I'm really trying to work in this, gang. It's it's a learning curve. Alrighty, so I'm going to turn it around, and I'm just going to line my wires up. And this is really what you're looking at here. This is our goal. Okay, let's see. So that's okay. We'll be making adjustments. So now, because you see how I'm kind of making a basket here and it's flipping up. So this part where the stone slides down, that stone can't fall out of there anymore. If I hold my wire, well, it can if I flip it over, but that's not the point. Is that I'm anchoring this up over the stone, and then I'm going to flatten or harden the wire with my bench block and hammer. So I'm just looking at that. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to tilt this up a little bit more. I'm going to get some pretty girthy flat nose, and I'm holding firmly down here in the X, okay? And you find whatever works for you. I just do things as I go. I can't draw worth a crap. Honestly, I can't. So I'm just kind of flipping it up a little bit more. So you see how the stone is captured in there now? And I want that to be really nice and clean, so because once you hammer it, you can't change your shape. it's very difficult to change the shape. So I really want that nice and clean and lined up. I want it to look really good because it's on the front of my stone. So I'm going to drop it back down there in that basket again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hammer this. So this is the front of your piece. I'm going to turn it over so I'm now on the back because I want to make my marks on the back. And I'm going to get my chasing hammer and I'm just going to put this on the edge here. And hopefully you can see this. And see how it lays over the lip of the hammering block. And I'm just going to gently start tapping as I'm holding it firmly. And I'm hammering the arc. And I'm just going back and forth and I'm sliding away. It's kind of like a letter or a C. I don't know, kind of like a C. So I'm kind of sliding away. It just takes practice. When I first started hammering, oh my gosh, let's just say it didn't look so good. All right, so now I'm going to turn this around and see how it's looking. And that's looking great. That's going to really stabilize that on the stone. Now, I did one the other day, and I actually flipped the hammer part up just to kind of get a different look. This is sitting around it, but I like that. So now I'm going to come around to the back and get all these distractions out of our way. And if someone can remember what the name of this is, please let me know. Okay, so now I'm going to center this up on the back because I'm going to bring these two wires together. And so you want to try to get as center as possible. You're going to be adjusting this as you're going. So I can tell I squeezed them apart too much already. So I'm just going to pull them back together. Just want to make sure I didn't widen them out too much. Okay, let's see if we're looking center here, and we are. So what I'm going to do is, if you're a beginner, it may be helpful to mark your wires. And if you're going to mark them, you can mark them on the inside or the outside. I'm just looking at my center here. So just get yourself a Sharpie, and it will help you a lot so that you get symmetry, and maybe use a round nose versus a very sharp tipped or flat nose plier, because that way you don't put as sharp as a bend in it. Don't worry about all that up there. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this mark here on the inside and this mark here on the inside. So I'm going to bend to the inside of each mark. So here's the inside of this mark, and here's the inside of this mark. So let's do that. And I'm going to use a very petite, tipped, round nose plier so that I don't put too sharp of a bend in it, but we can always adjust that. So I'm going to come on the inside first, and I'm going to come right at the top of that mark, and I'm going to bend it. I'm not trying to make a really sharp bend, and we can adjust it. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to come on the inside of that. Even though I've got ink going all the way up, I know where I stopped. And I'm just going to bend it. Normally I just grab my wires when they're X'd over or crossed over and I pinch them, but I wanted to show how you can do this if you don't feel comfortable pinching them off. And we'll make adjustments. You just want to keep your wires straightened out. So I'm going to flatten this out a little bit. Got a weird bend on it. So I'm going to open it up. Get down on that bend a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to put my stone back in. See how we're centering up here and we're not. So this is the fiddly part. This is why I mentioned when I started that it's more of an intermediate, because it's difficult when you're first starting to hold on to your stone and your wire when you really don't have an understanding of the wire yet. And that just comes in time. Just want to make sure it's centered up. It's really important that it's coming center over the back of that stone, because this is going to be your bail up here. So let's see what we got going here. I'm using this to be careful with moonstone or labradorite. It's a pretty soft stone. It has a lot of inclusions in it, and and it's subject to crack or break really easy. I was thinking there, so I want to make sure that this is centering up. And you just point it towards you and then look at your bottom. It's just very fiddly, y'all. Okay, so now we can make adjustments after we start our bail. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get 22 gauge half round wire, and I'm going to wrap my bail. If I can find where it's at. And if you haven't worked with half round again, it's a little, I think, difficult at first, especially when it's a very soft wire. So if you don't know what half round is, it's basically taking a piece of wire and cutting it in half. So you have a flat side, and my wire is kind of tangled up underneath here. So I'm gently untangling. It has a tendency to twist on you quite a bit, so you want to really pay attention to your flat side being down on your wire and your arch side being up. It's just got a slight dome on it because they cut that wire in half. So I'm going to do about, let me look at the back of the stone. So I'm going to wire wrap all the way up and then another 1/2 inch over. So if I know that this is the top of my stone and I need to come a 1/2 inch over that, let me give you another tip. You want to mark, you've got your stone in here, right? So you want to mark right here at the top, and then you want to measure your 1/2 inch from there, but then I remind myself that I'm going to be coming around the front, okay? So you got to remember when you're making a bail, if you only weave a 1/2 inch, you're going to have a 1/4 inch bail. So I need to double that. So I actually need 1 inch or more. I'm going to adjust as I go. This is just giving me a guideline of how far up I want to wrap my bail. And I don't know where the lid, here it is. I got to get a drink of water, you guys. Okay, so I'm going to cut myself about, and I don't know how my wire got so tangled up over itself, but it's the way it came from the manufacturer, so it got twisted on itself, and it seems to be doing that everywhere, and that's not a good thing because it's going to twist my 1/2 round. I'm going to cut myself about, looks like 18 inches. If it's too much, I'll use it. I just don't want to run out. Typically I work off the spool, but that's going to take me longer doing this. I'm going to start this, And then I'm going to finish it off camera so I don't bite into a lot of boring time for you guys watching me do this. So this is my back. So I'm going to turn it around because I want my wire to be tucked in here. And my wire's already spinning on me. I need to get myself turned around here and make sure I'm shaping out my half round. And sorry if I got out of camera there. I like to give myself a long tail. I want my wire to end here facing into the stone. So I'm just going to start wrapping around. Slide it down. Now before I finish anything here on the bottom, I'm going to put my stone in. I just want to make sure things are centering up. And they are. So that looks good. And we can make adjustments as we're going. So don't worry if something looks a little cockeyed or, you know, half off. So I'm just going to tuck this through here. And I need my needle nose. Now again with half round, if you want to see a tutorial on that, I'll go through it in detail. You got to watch that it doesn't twist on itself. And then I'm just going to bring it around the back. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm just going to bring it over. Because none of this really matters, this part, meaning I'm not worried about what it's going to look like. And I'm going to cut it off right here on the inside. Okay, let's see. And you see why I did that on the inside? Because we're hiding it. So you're not going to see it on the back. You're going to just see two perfect little tiny little wraps right down here. Okay, so I'm going to do the rest up to my mark, and I will be right back. So I've stopped. I actually didn't go all the way up to my full inch because I started realizing it was getting too big. And so I stopped, and this obviously is way too much half round wire, but that's just how it goes. So what you want to do is that this is going to be your front, the back side. So you want to make sure that you very gently line them up. Your round wire will have a tendency to twist on you, meaning roll over each other. So just make sure that they're flat and just very gently tap up and down so you have a nice, clean, flattened wire. Then we're going to go on the sides, and I can see that it rolled a little bit in here, so I'm going to straighten that out. That round wire kind of rolled on itself. So I'm just kind of tilting it up, going in the opposite direction that it wants to turn. Okay, so you may want to, and I'm going to get my duck bills. I think they're called duck bill flat pliers. I don't really know the name. I don't use them a lot, but when I do use them, I love them. It's really great for just flattening out your work. You see this wire, round wire here, how it wants to, I don't know if you see that, how it keeps wanting to roll onto it, the other wire. That's what the nature is of round wire. And this is going to be my front. Okay, let's get my stone in there. So that's pretty good. Just adjusting this. So I'm going to spread my wires out on top. Just pushing them down a little bit more. I noticed they were sliding up. Put this back in So I know where to bend my bail. And I'm just going to make a very little gentle bend in the opposite direction. I don't need all this wire here, so I'm going to cut some of it off. There we go. And I need to swing that around back. And that kind of bent my wire a little bit. It's a very fiddly project. Okay. Make sure my stone, everything's centered. It's really, really important. I'm just going to use my thumb instead of a tool because it's too many things in my hand at that point. And I'm just going to start shaping my bail. And then once I get it to where I want it, and if you need to, tape your stone in the back down. So now I'm going to pull my stone out so I can have a little bit more control over my wire as I start pushing this bail more into the body. So I'm hoping that that is not too far down, and it's not. That's really great. And I'm pushing it against the stone. I'm going to stand up, you guys, so that you can see. So I'm pushing it up against the stone. Let me turn it around so you can see what's going on here. See what I mean by how fiddly it is? So I'm going to take my stone out again, and I'm going to squeeze this down more and open these up. And I may be, or may not, cutting that wire or taking some out. I don't know. It's just as I go. I make adjustments as I go. Very fiddly. It's always harder doing this when you're teaching it than when you're just doing it. If anyone's ever noticed that, if they do tutorials, I think that they would all agree. So, see, I want these wires to wrap around the shoulder of the stone on the top. So I'm going to squeeze them in even more. So I'm pushing in on my bail. And you want to keep turning your work around to make sure that you're maintaining symmetry. Okay, so I'm going to pull my stone out again, just so that I can get some shape on this. And I want to see how much more I want to wrap in here. I don't think I want to do a whole lot, but I think what I'm going to do is cut my half round because that's way too long for me to start manipulating it underneath my wire. And I'm just going to run it through a couple more times. You need to hold firmly because remember, this is 20 gauge. So it's a soft wire. So be careful how hard you're pulling so that you don't distort the shapes in your wire. Let's go around again. Got a lot of things in my way here. I've got a camera stand to the right of my arm that I keep hitting. Let's see what that's looking like before I cut anything off. Where's my stone? I think that's good. I don't want it coming down too far. Okay, I'm gonna cut that off. And then I'm gonna start shaping this around the stone, and I'm also thinking of taping it. I don't work so freely when I'm teaching. I'm sure anybody can understand that, because I'm thinking about what I want to say versus just doing something in a total creative flow. Is that going to be too long? No. So let's see how we're lining up. I'm going to check out my back right now. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing the stone down just to see how this is lining up in the back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working in the front just for a few seconds or a few whatever moments. And I'm going to hold this very firmly on the bottom so that I can shape my wires. I'm pushing around the shoulder of the top of the stone. And it needs to be sitting down in here to do that. So I'm going to give it a little curve with my thumb. And another curve here. It's a lot of moving around. So I'm pushing that down, and we can adjust this. So I'm pushing those sides down. Let's see how they're looking in the front. That's looking good. And I'm going to swing it way over. And then I'm going to get my round nose. And I'm just going to turn this wire a little bit. I'm going to be careful about how tight I bend on that wire. Just need to get it out of the way and get myself started. And I'm pushing it into the bail on the back. And then I'm going to cross this one over. Before I do too much more, I'm going to check my front. I'm starting to get a little bit more control over my stone. Okay. So I'm just going to hold really firmly. Make a little bend here. What we're going to do is make a loop. All right, can you see that? And then I'm just going to get it above but near this wire. So right above this wire, because we're going to be connecting it there. You always need to watch your symmetry. And I'm using my thumb to push the wire against the back of the bail. This one's got to be bent up more. The fiddly part, very fiddly. So like this one, that's what we're doing. This got to come down, this one. So I need to turn it around, see what's going on in my front. You don't want to let that wire slide up too high on the top of your stone. Make your adjustments as you're going, or you may not be able to get back in there later. I want that to ride down a little bit more. So I want to pull. I'm going to use my pliers now, just down on my stone a little bit. Very, very fiddly. Okay, so here's where we're going to start connecting. Just want to see how it's looking in the front. I don't want it sliding up too much. So I'm pushing this part over the stone to line it up. And that's looking pretty good. And I'll be adjusting and squeezing in this bale a whole lot more. Okay, so now we're going to get ourselves some, you can use 26 or 28. I'm going to look at my scrap first. See what I got before I cut into my spool. And I've got plenty. This is how I do my scrap wire. I get these big envelopes and I write the gauge on it. And I throw everything in there. I got plenty of scrap wire, plenty of length. So to make my life easy, first you can either start wrapping this wire first or this wire first. I'm going to wrap this one first. And I want my wire to come over. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm coming underneath and I want it to go in this direction. So it just makes it easier for me to wrap. Once we get these connected, we'll have a tremendous amount of, well, not tremendous, but a lot more control over what we're doing. So I'm going to make 3 wraps because you've got this slippery cabochon and this round wire. So all of those factors can work a little against you. When you're working with square wire or a flat wire, you have a lot more control over it. So I'm going to do 3 wraps. And it's easier working on your base wire, meaning the wire that's already secured, coming off of that, than wrapping around this and maybe perhaps pulling the wire out of shape. And then I'm going to come over it and under. And before I pull down super, super tight, I'm going to take a look again to see how things are lining up. And that looks good. I need to curve this in more, so I'm going to hold very firmly here. And I am going to bend this up more. Let me see what I did, if I made any major tweaks there, because that, see how it pulled it up more here? Because that'll move your wire around. But I'm going to adjust that anyways because I'm going to be pulling on that one. So I'm going to pull it in. Better. I just adjusted it there a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to wrap 3 times. And then 3 again. Where did my wire go? I can't see it. I'm trying to hold on to my stone, not pull too tight on my wire. You're going to start to feel once you secure one side that things are going to get better in control for you. I've done this concept several different ways, and it's very similar in how I do it. I just change things up sometimes. Okay. I'm starting to really get more control over my stone, and so I'm not going to cut that one off first. I'm just going to snap this one, and if you haven't seen that, it's just a wiggle, jiggle, and it snaps clean off. This one I'll cut off in a second. Let's give them a little hug together. And I think I have enough wire here to use. So I need to come this way. I'm getting myself all confused. I'm like laughing at myself. I'm like, oh my God, someone help me. I want to come as close to the inside here to start those 3 loops. Well, I don't want you on the inside of that. And I'm sure you've all noticed with yourselves the directions that we work in, and some are just so much easier than others. I want to pull this wire up, holding very firmly, get it out of the way there. And now I'm going to wrap around these 2 wires. It's so much easier going in this direction. And again, if you're a beginner and you pull this off, please let me know. I'd love to see your work. You can always post on my facebook.com/DDLynn Designs. That is where I post all my new designs before I put them on my webpage. So while you're doing this, really hold your wires down firmly. Over here, see where my thumbnail is? I'm pushing down on that good and snug so that I don't pull the shape out of my wire. And I had plenty of wire. Save your scrap. I had a 1-inch piece of 20 gauge this morning, and I made 2 jump rings out of it. I didn't do that in the beginning because I didn't know. But now I have scrap boxes of so much copper wire, it's crazy. And I'm building my little silver scrap box. But I'm very careful when I use silver. I really try to minimize and mitigate loss because it's so expensive. And silver's gone up so much, but we're not paying $25 an ounce at I think it is Rio Grande. I think they're 35 to 40 depending on the gauge you get. Well, that adds up really quickly when you're working with sterling silver. So I'm looking at my back because that's going to tell me how my symmetry is here as well. I'm going to arc this up and I'm going to turn it around. That's looking really good. I'm getting so much more control over supporting my stone, and we can adjust down here no problem. So because I did this totally freestyle, I'm referring to what I did. Then I brought it around and over the bail. Okay. All right, let's get rid of these wires. Hopefully that's not too short. It wasn't. Let me hold this side down super firmly. Perfect. And I'm going to hold this side down. Really firm. I'm not letting that wire, those core wires, move at all. There we go. I'm going to save this scrap. It's about 3 inches, and it will come in handy. Okay, let's move along. So I kind of need to reference what I did here because like I said, it's all freestyle. Okay, so what we're going to do is on the back, we're going to bring these up even more. And more here. We want to come really close to the wire. And watch your front. And then we're going to swing this wire in and we're going to follow. So I'm riding very closely next to that. So I'm holding this down and I'm going to follow the wire shape that's already there. So you should have something like this, just like this one. But this was a smaller stone, so I made smaller little teardrop bends in the wire. Then we're going to follow up. We're following, and I'm kind of shaping the wire as I'm going over the top of the stone and the bale. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're following, and I'm shaping it because I want it to go in that direction. Needs to come down a little bit, down, down, down. Let's see. Kind of like a little more gap space there, but I can always do that with my pliers. Now we're going to bring our wires. You want to watch your center around the back. This is such a chunky stone. Now, if you're concerned, you could connect your wires off here, especially if you're using like a 21 gauge. So I'm just bending these over the top of the stone. Thinking almost about coming around again and kind of just adding more to this design. Looking at this, pull these down a little bit. There we go. Now, before I do anything else and wrap this around my bale, I'm going to very gently, with a soft edge plier, and I'm going to squeeze my bale in very, very gently. Do you see how slow I'm doing that? Because I don't need a huge, huge, giant loop in there. Just enough. And then I'm going to tilt that neck forward a little bit. Just put a little bend in it. Bend in the back a little bit. Just bringing it in. We're almost done. So now what we're going to do is, I have way too much wire here. And did I come all the way around again? I did not. I'm going to cut my wire. And this is too much, I can already tell. But that's okay. I'll be using that scrap. Just kind of want to set myself up. I want to bring this bale forward a little bit more. Lots of little adjustments. This wire, I'm going to move up so I can get this one around the back. See how I'm pushing it? And I'm going to tuck it in on the inside of the bale. So I'm going to lift that up and out of my way, holding very firmly on the front so that I don't distort my wires. Now I know that that's way too much length. Less is not more in wire art, because if you need the wire and you cut too much off, and that's probably going to be too long still, but that's okay. I'm going to pre-shape the bend that I need, so it makes it easy for me to get my plier in there. And actually, that's working out pretty perfect. So I'm going to get these are a thicker, wider girthed flat nose plier by Xuron. And when you're working with little tiny pieces of wire that you just need to crimp off, it's much easier working with something with a wider jaw and more girthier, meaning heavy duty, because you don't have to press as hard and it won't slip off your wire as easily, especially round wire. So tips, tricks, and techniques, because these little petite nose are going to have a tendency to slip off even though you're getting in a little place. I'm anchoring off the wire itself and I'm just rolling it in. So that's what you should have. I'm going to stand up, you guys, so that you can see, hopefully. So that wire's going around. So my top wire here, it's crossing over. It's going around the back and tucking in. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And this one is going to cross over the top. So I want to bring this down a little bit. I want to bring this back one down just a little bit. Just snuggle down in there. Okay. And I'm using my fingers because this is such a soft wire. So here's a tip for beginners. The hardest thing in the beginning, well, one of the hardest things is learning how much length you need to tuck your wires in, to hide them, etc., to attach them to another wire. It's better to pre-shape and then cut. Get yourself where you want yourself to go. So I know that I'm going to need about, I'm going to get my, as I said, you guys, I'm always going to take my time to explain things in detail. I just want to see if it's 1 millimeter or 2. It's actually more than that. So I'm going to need 2 millimeters, and I'd rather cut, do you see that? 2 millimeters. So I'm going to cut right here where this was. And if I need to take some off, I will, and I'll do that before I totally crimp down on my wire and curl it in. But I'm thinking that should be just enough. And I'll know as I start curling that tip in if I have too much. So I'm going to hold very, very firmly, pushing from the back to the front. And I'm going to do that tip. So I'm right on the tip of that wire and I'm holding super firmly because I don't want to pull my wire in the front. You should have something like that. And now I'm going to use my flat nose to crimp it in. Before I crimp down too tight, I want to see how everything's going. I want to kind of bring this wire right here down a little bit. I want to pitch it down much better. Pitch it down even more, so I'm just using my pliers without compromising my shape. Let's slide this little guy down. I want to pinch that in a little bit more. And I'm anchoring off the wire itself. As I'm rolling it without smashing anything. Everything in this ancient art, to me, is done in very little increments so that you can control what you're doing. So let's turn it down. And there we have it. Now I'm going to make some just little tweaks and adjustments. Open this up a little bit more right here. I kind of like that. I like that so much better, having that little spread. Back here, I noticed that it's riding a little bit higher here, and I'm very particular. So how I correct that is I bend this wire up in here more. And that's so much better to me. Now I'm looking at my bottom. I want to adjust that. So let's see. What did I notice here a minute ago? Or was I hallucinating? Oh, talking out loud. I'm just kind of curving that end down a little bit. I like that so much better. These little subtle movements. So what I'm doing is I'm holding very, very firmly. And I'm grabbing this edge here. And I'm tilting it in just a little bit. Just on its edge where it meets the stone. Just giving it a little tilt in. That's going to actually tighten it up against the stone every more and give more of a curve. Do you see how this is curving down now? Before it almost looked like it was a little flat across. This one's pitched up, that one I pitched down. You can pitch this down too if you wanted, but I just wanted to do it a little bit different. I'm going to curve that a little more. I'm really liking that. I'm holding so tight. And I'm going to pitch it in. And I'm turning in towards the stone. Oh, I super duper like that. A lot better. It just, I think, adds more dimension to the design. And there you have it. I'm sure you were taking a lot of deep breaths going, how the hell am I going to hold on to this stone? It's just different with each one based on the shape. Like I said, this one here I pitched down, that one I pitched up. Just depends on the look that you want. So now let's add this beautiful piece. I think this is my front. It is. Just to see how gorgeous this is going to be. Do you see how you can take a component and change everything? I'm going to be using jump rings. And I like twisted jump rings a lot. And I like to use 20 gauge. And I believe I don't have the size in here I want. So I'm going to twist some 20 gauge square wire. This is my half round that I want to put away. So there are different ways to do it. I'm going to use my tool. This is what I use. I'm not going to be able to show you because I slide it down my leg, but I put my 20 gauge square in here, tighten it off, and then if you can imagine the top of your thigh, I hold the wire over here with my pliers while the wire's inside, and this rolls. It naturally rolls, and I roll it down my leg, and it twists the wire really, really fast. So I'll be right back. So I just wanted to pop back in really quick. So I put my 20 gauge square wire. I don't know what this is called. I can't remember. And this is the end. And so I'm going to grab this end. And you can actually do this in your hand. If you watch here, I can start twisting my wire here. See how it's twisting? Just by using my hand. But it's really fast if you're rolling it off your leg. I'm just going to do this by hand for you guys. So see, I'm twisting down here. And I'm holding very firmly here. And you're going to get a lot of reflection because the light, and as this is twisting, but let me see if I can get a better. And I want it twisted really, really tight because I want that to be a super strong jump ring. And when you twist the wire, it hardens the dickens out of it. And it's almost seamless when you bring the jump rings together. So you're getting another technique of mine. That looks really good and tight. So you just open up the jaw. It's kind of like a hand drill. I don't know what it's called. Give me your feedback, you guys, on everything that I forget what it's called. And all I'm going to do is make my jump rings. And I haven't decided how many I'm going to attach, but I'm going to attach a lot because I like things to hold up. And what size do I want? I want my second step because I don't want that to be the focal point. But I love how pretty the twisted part is on the jump ring. And if you're new to wire wrapping and this is your first tutorial of mine you're watching, these are called 6-step bail making pliers. You can get them anywhere. So I'm just going to keep twisting. And as you're twisting, you want to slide your wire up a little bit. And if you notice when I started my twist, I started towards the top versus having my wire come down. This way, as I'm twisting and the jump rings start getting extended, they'll just extend above it, and I can keep going with as much wire as I have. So you see how it's coming above that now? Just make sure you wiggle it up a little bit. Give yourself some room. Okay. And then you have yourself a set of jump rings. So I'm going to get my nippers. And I'm just going to cut myself, I think about 4 or 5 right now. Now, if you haven't cut jump rings before, here's another lesson. You always want to come flush. So wherever your edge is, you're going to be flush. Now, the wire is going in the opposite direction. So if you snipped your wire here on the flush side of the nipper, so it's nice and flat, you need to turn your pliers around, get as close as you can. Let's see if I can stand up so you can see this. I'm losing my light, you guys. I don't know what the heck is going on. And you want to, so that they're flat on each side. Okay. All right, let's get going. I knew this was going to take a while because of all the fiddliness and constantly shaping your wire. So I'm going to need mine up there first. So let me do the top first. I just saw something. And I might have to have a bigger jump ring to get these guys in here. We're going to see in a second if this, I think it will. So actually, I'm going to do the bottom first. I might still need a bigger jump ring. These are pretty tiny. I could have gone a size up, but I didn't want it to be the focal point. Just want to see if I need 2 or a bigger jump ring. Want to see how this is going to hang in there. Yep. So I'm going to need a bigger jump ring here, so I'm going to have to go to my 3-step. I'll be right back. So what I did is I just cut some bigger jump rings. I don't know what's happening with my camera and the whole blur thing here. And I did 2 down here. And then I'm just going to come off. I'm using the smaller jump ring here. This is going to be so, so pretty. It's really going to be pretty. Very elegant. And here's another tip. Once I connect my jump rings, I flatten. I squeeze really hard, but not enough to change the shape. I make sure that they're lined up on top by simply putting my pliers in there. I'm holding on to a lot of components here. So I really want to flatten the top of that. And do you see how it's almost seamless? Once I'm done oxidizing and then I put this in my tumbler, you won't even see it. So let's see if that's good enough. Look how pretty that is. Isn't that pretty? Wish there was a way to... So there's this one and then this one. I connected this component directly to that, but I had... Instead of... When I did the tutorial on this style, you guys, I used the last wire of making that component to connect off. On this one, I used the largest loop. On this one, I left the largest loop open so I could connect it. But aren't those beautiful? I'm going to put a bead in there. But there you have it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and being a part of this magical, wonderful wire art community. It is truly an ancient art. Please respect it and honor it. Don't give your stuff away for free. Let everyone else spend the thousands of hours of dedication to understand what it takes to make this beautiful, beautiful designs. I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. May you have a wonderful, magical wire wrap day. Bye for now.